Good morning. There is a coolness in the air. It was a bit hot yesterday and I love this cool morning air. It clears up quite quickly while the weather's hot and you get an hour or two of fresh air in the morning, and fresh clear air is good for clear thoughts as well. Probably can't see too clearly, but Arthur and I are taking a walk here and it's just an opportunity to briefly focus on some things I heard yesterday, and they kind of coincide with advice I've given to myself at the Edinburgh Fringe as a reviewer, as a writer and an occasional theatre maker. And it's to use the final week at the Fringe as a place for experimentation. And if you've got into a mode where you're selling out, you've had great reviews and you're just continuing to harvest that success, this video may not be for you. But I'd invite you even to be open to what I'm about to say to anybody else who's had perhaps a more restless time at the Fringe. And the last week can be the nothing to lose week if things have not been going well, and all to gain week. All cyclists and runners here. The city is waking up. And so I spoke to somebody yesterday actually who early on in their Fringe run was here to try some work in progress, and she came with a script. She wasn't very happy with the script and wasn't getting huge audiences, some days none at all, but wasn't really here for that. And I guess if you can afford it, well fine, I think this person could. But that then was about, actually she dropped the script. She's a skilled improviser and did her show as a form of improvisation and got a lot happier with it. And he's now in a position where some of the script is making its way back in. Part of the format's still there that was there at the start, but she's tinkering with it in a good way, not tinkering with it in a way that feels unsatisfying. But people with successful shows can also have the confidence, particularly if the last week's not about more reviews, of trying stuff out, shortening it, introducing a few new lines here and there, and one or two people make some radical changes. But it's such an energising thing to be at the world's largest arts festival and to have the courage, to have the confidence, to have the curiosity, the creative restlessness to try out different stuff. Some comedians, now their show's bedded in, go and do guest slots with new material on some open mic nights, some places where you can just sign up. But even with a theatre show, if you're going to tour and you've had to cut your show down and you took out bits that you didn't like, this could be a time to put in something that you took out and see how it lands, particularly how it lands with you rather than anyone else. Now I think it's still about respecting the audience. I'm not sure you can put something on that really sort of changes it beyond what your product was being sold on the website. But absolutely the audience don't have a copy of your script, and as long as you make those little experimental changes in ways that also allow the audience to still experience what you advertised, certainly there's all kinds of scope. You can take out sound cues, you might put new ones in, you might try different music to change the emotional feeling mood of a particular scene. You might play around with pacing, you might play around with silence. Certainly lighting cues can also be played with. You might have two different versions of an ending, and now it's time to see how that lands with you as well. Your creativity is yours, and sometimes, according to the writer James Wilk, the smallest intervention, the smallest change can have a big system impact. And so part of that spirit of experimentation might be to make really small but telling changes. The word, I guess, innovation comes in here, because innovation, I think, particularly is where you make a change and there's a kind of measurable benefit. And it may well be that you notice a change is getting a bigger whoop of laughter from audience members, particularly in comedy. But you might find you increase the shock factor. In a horror play, suddenly a few changes, you go, wow. You could feel the fear. You could feel it on stage, you could feel it in the audience. But you could make more radical changes, and just over 2 shows. So we're really trying to shift this. We're taking out a whole scene. We're rewritten it. And improv groups sometimes drop a game they've been running for too long and say, let's try something, we don't know if it will work. And I think the spirit of experimentation, it gets the brain cells moving. Look, here we have you just missed it, a brilliant grey squirrel was running along a wall, and then at the last minute changed, probably thinking I was going to eat it, and changed to save its life as it leapt into a tree. Change is good for us, change is good for the brain. Change sometimes creates stress, and I think up here, if it's done for the right reasons, it creates a good creative stress. And when you feel the benefit of innovation, that we did something and it improved something, that can be so good for you. And then it can plant the seeds of more success going forward and let you hit the ground running in September as the Fringe ends in Edinburgh, and say we've got a better show. And I've mentioned in another video, sometimes those changes can come from peer group feedback, those you trust. Sometimes it can come from a reviewer who you actually, when you read their review, nod and go, I think they've got that spot on. You come out of defensive mode as a habit, the idea that all reviewers are idiots, and when they write a good review, for a moment they've abandoned their idiocy and it's in your favour. The classic one where a 1-star reviewer has no idea what they're looking at, but the 5-star reviewer is a genius. Come off that line, be open to a bit of feedback. I'm a bit out of breath because I'm climbing up here a bit, not climbing up the side of Arthur's Seat, but just up here to get into the city. So ultimately, come off the line of everything being about defending your show against reviewers and actually taking a few risks. That last week at the Fringe is the place to do that. And I'm aware from conversations, some people are doing that quite significantly and radically. And the danger there is that you get too confused with your own work. And it's not a sort of responsible risk taking, because we are up here at the Fringe with advertised shows, and audiences have right to say it doesn't do what it said on the tin when I bought these tickets. But in some shows that are interactive and the fourth wall is down, you can almost contract with the audience to try new stuff. Storytellers saying, I'm going to do a story today for the first time. Audiences love that. They love that freshness. So just a thought, that last week that we come into is perhaps the best week, because it's a chance to let go a bit and get creative.